Okay, so this is week 2, or summary 2, really, for the Civil Rights and Constitution class 2016. So, from the reading, what you need to know. We're going to get this done quickly and efficiently. So, it is the height of MLK's power. It is the post-1964 Civil Rights Act. Fighting in Vietnam is currently taking political precedent for the president. The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which is the MFDP, as it was referenced multiple times in the reading, are a strong political power right now in Mississippi. And then the Freedom Schools are going hand in hand with the MFDP. So we'll get to both of those just in a little bit. And we also have some main political figures besides MLK, which is LBJ, RFK, and JFK. So Lyndon B. Johnson, Robert F. Kennedy, and John F. Kennedy, all sort of really playing important roles here. Now, what we should note is that JFK is dead at this point. So JFK, who in our last reading, in our last segment, had been a main pusher for civil rights, really was gone at this point. So LBJ and RFK are working together very closely to determine what we do now with African American rights and with race relations and everything. So RFK, who is still the Attorney General at this point, who was very close to MLK through his brother and through the 60s and late 60s, as we'll come to know in the next couple readings, is really pushing LBJ to deal with the issues that are happening in Mississippi. And yes, does it always seem like Mississippi? Yes, it is always Mississippi. But Mississippi, even now, has the highest concentration of African Americans in the country. So, going back to the MFDP and the Freedom Schools. So the Freedom Schools, we'll go on those first. They were set up as a way to bring political equality, inspiration, education to African American communities. So it's essentially the idea to give students the idea they had the potential to go out into the world and do anything they could, and to get involved politically, and to have a voice, and to have a say in what was going to happen to them post 1964. Because even though the 1964 Civil Rights Act was a huge step forward in African American rights in this country, it still was not everything. And as we'll learn, 1965 was when the Voting Rights Act was instilled. So in 1964, while in theory they were still technically supposed to be classified as equal, they weren't really able to vote. And as we learned in the reading, many hotels and motels in the South would not let them stay there. And many of them ended up closing or being burned down by Klan members or vandalized by Klan members for taking in black people. So the freedom still really was not there. So the idea was if they can get as many black people involved in politics and in their communities and in their cities as possible, maybe political change would come faster. And that's also kind of what the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party was fighting for. The similar idea of race assimilation, integration, equality, and prosperity in those communities. So really just a lot of that. And the reading focused more heavily on what happened when the 1964 Civil Rights Act was passed and when black people tried to go to restaurants and hotels in the Deep South and stay for conventions, and what happened to the white owners who did and did not let them go, and what happened to them when they tried to go into them. So we see still a lot of rising violence, a lot of prejudice, a lot of issues happening in the Deep South. But what they are trying to make light of is the 1964 Civil Rights Act was passed. That was a huge piece of legislation, and LBJ was now fighting Vietnam and trying to figure out what to go with Vietnam. And, he's got the Gulf Tonkin Resolution. He's got a couple other acts that have been passed through at this point to try and get the war figured out and get economic stability for the war. And MLK is basically sending notes to the president pleading for more help in the South because there is more to be done. There is more that is needed to be done. And I'm sure we'll see more of that in our next reading or so. But for right now, that's all you need to know.